Thank you for joining the Special Fathers Network Dad Zoom call on the topic of vulnerability as a strength. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. We do these bi-weekly Zoom call on topics that the dads tell us that are of interest to them. And we're really privileged to have a couple of 3 dads on the call tonight to talk about the topic of vulnerability. So why don't you each make a couple minute introduction, so you'll have a better understanding of who one another are, and then I'll talk a little bit about the topic, and then we'll just open it up for a conversation. So Scott, you're the seasoned dad here. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, my name is Scott Sowers. I live in Lilburn, Georgia. I'm celebrating my 40th anniversary on Sunday. We have I have 2 children. One is a high school world history teacher for going on her 15th year. My other daughter's Gloria. She's 33. She's autistic, mentally delayed, but she's awesome. And I have a granddaughter that's 4 and a grandson that's 6 months. So I'm loving that. I've been involved in the special needs community for years, of course, with Gloria, and I've been coaching special needs baseball for 18 years. I'm head of the special needs ministry at our church. Been on the Atlanta Archdiocese Special Needs Committee, and just made a film called Special Needs. It's playing on PureFlix. If you have that stream, you might check it out. And everything's great. I love being here. I love what we're doing.
Glad you could join us. Thanks, Scott. Andrew, why don't you make a brief introduction?
Yeah, so I'm Andrew Fruhschien. I am very kind of new to this whole special needs community. I have a son that's 4, and then my daughter Haley is now a year. She's 18 months now. So she has a very rare genetic disorder called Jordan syndrome. So she's actually the only child that we know of, at least in terms of actual being diagnosed in New Jersey, and she's one of like 50 in the US. So she has like with Jordan syndrome, she has a very low tone, which is improving. So she's getting a lot of physical therapy and stuff. And, she's probably going to have some cognitive delays and different things, but we actually have a really good research team that's working on this. So we're actually hoping that they think they might be able to help alter some of the genetics with this, if not, cure it. So we're actually pretty far along. The Jordan network's really strong considering it's so rare. So I'm kind of new to all this. I would say I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I was actually on, they had a rare disease week on Capitol Hill. So I'm kind of trying to like immerse myself in a whole bunch of different things. So I kind of learned the political end of it and how frustrating it could be for probably some of the things that you guys have even gone through over all the years. And then my wife actually, she's kind of dealing with things a little different. She actually started her own blog and has been blogging about her whole experience, and has been probably in the last like 2 months has actually had a lot of followers with her blog and stuff. And she's been nominated for a couple healthcare like awards, I guess, that have to do with outreach with mothers and stuff. So both of us have gotten, probably in the last year, have gotten more involved in a community that we knew absolutely kind of nothing about. So that's a little about me.
Excellent. And from what I remember, I think you connected with Al Feria. He lives in the same community or nearby or something like that.
Yeah, we actually saw Al 2 weekends ago at the pool. So that was kind of cool. We kind of like bumped in totally random, and he said, "I think you're that guy that I've been seeing on those Zoom calls." So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, small world and getting smaller every day.
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad the 2 of you could join the call. The topic of tonight's conversation is vulnerability as a strength. And Scott was joking, Andrew, before you joined, that maybe that's why guys are avoiding the call, right? Nobody wants to show their vulnerability. And, there's some truth to that. Our culture is a rugged individualist culture. And, that's not something most guys wear on their sleeve. When I was a younger guy like yourself, Andrew, this is going back 25, 30 years ago, when I was in my 20s and early 30s, I remember you were supposed to be a guy who was sort of a Renaissance sort of guy if you could wear a pink shirt, right, in public. And, you were sort of making a statement because, you were confident enough in your own masculinity, where you weren't going to let the color of your shirt, sort of influence what other people were thinking or what you would be willing to wear. So, and I sort of joke when I say that, but there's some truth to it, right? There are certain things that guys do that other guys won't do. And I think that the tide is turning, or at least I hope the tide is turning on masculinity. And, when people can express themselves authentically, which I think is another word for showing some vulnerability, I think people are more relatable, right? They're more believable. And it opens up opportunities to have a more meaningful dialogue and form a relationship. So this topic is a super important topic, at least when we polled the dads at the beginning of the year and we asked them which topics that they'd like to hear about. This was one that made the cut. And I'm not an expert on vulnerability, but as a 60-year-old, with 5 adult children, 1 grandchild, I can say that my perspective is different today than it was when I was just a young dad, coming up through the ranks. And, it's very enlightening for me to have immersed myself in the world of special needs more deeply the last 3 or 4 years, and to not only have interviewed 160 dads, right? Those are the episodes that have been produced, but there's another 25 to 30 episodes that are already in the can waiting to be produced. And there's some 500 dads that, we've come in contact with through the various programs, including the conferences that we put on. And I think one of the hallmarks of those that seem to have made the adjustment, gone from the shock of having a child with special needs, the denial, the grief, the anger, the, woe is me, having a pity party for themselves, and who have moved on, right, to the acceptance that this is their child. Like Scott, you were saying, Gloria's beautiful. And I know that your wife, Sharon, always says this, right? Gloria's perfect just the way she is, right? That's maybe not the way the world judges people with special needs, but I think that's a really important perspective for a parent to have, a mom or a dad, is that their child is their child, right? This is how they were made. This is how God made them. And it doesn't mean that you have to accept that as, it's never going to improve, right? Just have to, play the bad hand that you were dealt as best you can. But I'm encouraged when I hear stories like your own, Andrew, about, research that's being done on something that's super rare. And, there are stories out there, right? The John Crowley story, 2 of his 3 children were diagnosed with Pompe disease at a very early age. There was no hope for them. They weren't expected to the past 3 or 5 years. And John pivoted, refocused his career, tried to find a cure, and by golly, through a lot of luck and some divine intervention, they found a cure for Pompe disease. They weren't able to reverse what it does, but Megan and Patrick are in their 20s now. Megan is a graduate student at UNC Chapel Hill, and she wants to be a social worker. And, it's been a challenge for he and his wife, Eileen, to raise their 3 kids. And John, the dad, would tell you that his son, John, has actually been more challenging than the 2 kids with Pompe disease. And, let me paint a vivid picture for you. Both Megan and Patrick are in wheelchairs and on ventilators, right? There's no real expectation that they're going to ever walk or ever be able to breathe without the assistance of a ventilator. And John's perspective is that our oldest son, John Jr., with Asperger's and some other, challenges, has been more challenging to raise than the other 2 kids. So he's very authentic. He's very open about sort of admitting what some of his strengths and weaknesses are. And I think that's part of the secret sauce. That's why I mentioned John Crowley's story. And in the context of the journey that you and your wife, Andrew, are on, and you've only been on for 18 months. Your daughter is only 18 months old, right? You've got years and decades, ahead of you. And I'm hoping that your story, just keeps improving, right? And, God willing, that there's a breakthrough of some type, and that, she'll be able to do things that you could never expect, a child with that type of diagnosis today to do 5 or 10 or 20 years down the road. And, if you haven't already, I think listening to many of the podcasts, not all the dads are wearing their vulnerability on their sleeve, but it's enlightening when you do hear a dad talk about some of the challenges that he's experienced and admit some of the failings that he's had, which I think is, again, showing her vulnerability. And in an extreme case, Becky Davidson, down in Cookeville, Tennessee, who lost her husband at age 50 about 3 or 4 years ago. Sadly, Jeff died. I forget what the situation. He'd been quite sick for a decade. But after he passed, they have a son. His name is John Alex, and he's got severe autism, 2 or 3 other things. And he has these grand mal seizures, which, it could be a life-ending type of experience. And she talked about, the first grand mal seizure her son had after her husband passed, and how vulnerable she felt, right? She realized then that she was really on her own. There wasn't anybody that was going to be there to back her up or, share the experience with. And from that point going forward, she had to do things that she wasn't accustomed to doing. And when I interviewed her for the podcast, it's a really good interview. Most of them are really good interviews, like Scott's is a really good interview as well. She mentioned literally verbatim that her vulnerability is her superpower, right? I wish she could be on the call tonight, right? To, share her own perspective and echo those words. But I know it's a fact. And anyway, those are some points of context as relates to the topic that we are hoping to cover tonight. And maybe what I'd like to do, just because it's a very intimate conversation between the 3 of us, Andrew, I'm wondering what experience you've had with expressing your vulnerability, or when you think of vulnerability, what is it that comes to mind from your own experience? Maybe you could talk about it pre-children, going back 4 or more years ago, and then subsequent to becoming a dad.
So that's hard. I think for me, I think one of the things, I think this topic's actually a really difficult one for me, because I'm not very, I think one of my probably weaknesses is that I'm not very good at verbalizing kind of my own feelings. I think my wife's much better at that, and clearly she's doing her own blog thing, like that's her thing. I would say, now my background is I'm actually a nurse practitioner, so I think part of my problem in this whole process, if it's a problem, is that I think of everything very medically. So I'm kind of driven. As soon as we kind of got Haley's diagnosis, my wife was very much wanting to internalize it and talk about it. And I'm not very good with that. It was more like I kind of jumped to, okay, what do we have to do? We got to get her therapy. I mean, right now I take her every day to therapy at the hospital. So I work at a hospital in New Jersey, and I take her. We're lucky we have a daycare there, and I literally, in between patients and bringing her to and from therapy. So we have a great setup, but my mind is very geared towards that. Vulnerability wise, I'm trying to think before kids, what were some of my vulnerabilities? Pre-kids, it was probably, I think my vulnerability has always been being able to communicate better. Like I said, I think my wife is always wants to talk about her feelings, and I think my vulnerability is just not being able to sometimes think about how I'm actually feeling. I am pretty good at figuring out how she's feeling and how others are feeling. I'm very good at that, but my vulnerability is not ever really thinking too often about how I'm actually doing, which is probably why I even searched this whole group out, was that I was like, I need to hear from other people on how they actually communicate and voice their concerns. So I would say that I think I started and then, when you become a father, I guess, with my typical son, I guess my vulnerability is with him is just learning to kind of, I came from a household where my parents were and my parents are great. They help us out with the kids. They're awesome, but my parents are a little bit structured. So I have to learn to kind of let things kind of take its course sometimes. I think one of my vulnerabilities is that I also need to figure out like things can be a little messy. Things don't have to be in a certain place. So that's probably another one of my things. So when I had our first son, I probably was always worried about this isn't in the right place. That's not in the right place. And now that we've had Haley, I've kind of learned like I'm still somewhat organized, but I've also learned there's definitely much more priorities in life than figuring out how to just keep everything so neat all the time. If that kind of answers the question, those are kind of some of the thoughts that kind of came to my head.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking a stab at it. I can relate to what you're saying. I've sort of prided myself, literally for most of my life, on not being emotional, right? And the way I rationalize it is that I'm a financial advisor, right? I manage investment portfolios. In some cases, it's millions, tens of millions of dollars and more, right? And the last thing our clients are looking for is somebody who's going to be emotional, right? Oh, the market's up or down, right? What are we supposed to do? I'm sort of nervous about things. That's, not the message I want to project. And I think that maybe there's a reason to be thinking about separating what you do professionally and what we do in our personal lives. And I'm not saying be one person over here and another person over there, but I think that as it relates to communicating, right? There's sort of a way to communicate with your wife, which it sounds like you do a pretty effective job with. And there's a way to communicate with your kids and let them know as they get older, dad has feelings too, right? Dad gets sad, or dad gets disappointed, or, there's things that, don't always go right, as opposed to always putting on the happy-go-lucky face, just to make sure that, you're bringing some happiness into the family. So that's a thought that comes to mind.
Hey, David, can I jump in for a sec?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Since we're just talking. Andrew, you said you're a nurse practitioner. I assume you take care of patients during the day. That's your job. And your patients are at their most vulnerable in the hospital. And I think part of your, which is great, because like Dave and I always talk about, men are fixers. We want to fix everything. And I heard you talking about, I'm going to fix this. When I first had Lori, when I was 20s, I wanted a fixer. This was back in 1988, 89. I wanted that we could cure this. We can figure this out. And so I had the same kind of issues but that's men. Men are fixers. We solve problems. Women are nurturers, and so on. Now, you as a nurse practitioner, I just think about what you're doing every day and the people you talk to, and that they're at their most vulnerable. And you can't be vulnerable back. You could, and you probably do. They say something like, oh, I'm this and that. And you say, yeah, I can relate to that. I did that too. You probably open up to your patients a lot more than you do your friends and other nurses, other doctors, and so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind, when you're listening to your patients, because you're in a house of vulnerability. I mean, that's what a hospital is. And, I think a lot of men get vulnerability confused when they think of it, because they think, oh, that means, I might be depressed. I'm sad. I'm not happy, so on and so forth. And a lot of people back in Texas, we used to call it hanging your laundry out to dry. You don't want to hang your laundry out for everybody in their neighbor to see. But there are people you can talk to, because you've got to be able to share those feelings, or you're never going to get well-rounded, as they say. Because emotion is the biggest thing ever going forward for you and your wife. She's doing her blog and she is going great guns at it. And what a fantastic outlet. I mean, that's awesome. You sound like you don't really have that outlet, but the emotional part of all this and raising a child like you're going to do long-term is, man, you got to pace yourself, and you definitely have to share your feelings with other men, friends, parents, relatives. I'm not saying go out there and, oh, woe is me. I'm just, think about who's the vulnerable person in your family. It's your daughter. and your son, of course, but in typical sense. But your daughter is. She's the most vulnerable person in your family. She's going to be the most vulnerable person your entire life, in your life. So everything you do for her is vulnerable. When they say vulnerability is a strength, you can use that vulnerability to advocate for her, to get the best care for her, and so on and so forth. Not that, oh, look, we got to take care of our daughter. You know, she's in such a hard time. I have a lot of parents that have real, extremely children that are extremely special needs. And I never hear them. They're tired all the time, and we talk, but they're never complaining. You know, they're not, they joke about it, but deep down they're there. But they know that their vulnerability is good as a strength to talk to people and to keep their emotions in check. Because if you don't express your vulnerability and your feelings and thoughts with someone, you know, a friend, a family member, your wife. I mean, you guys talk, I'm sure, all the time. But you've got to balance that. You got to let that out, because just like the patients in your hospital, if they can't sit there and complain to you and be vulnerable to you, I mean, that's part of their healing process, is it not? You know, and so see, that. Take from that and know that as you get older and you grow with your daughter, express that vulnerability to people. You know, talk to people. Don't keep it. Don't do like a lot of guys I know that are old like me. They don't talk to anybody, and you know, you could touch them with a needle and they'd probably explode. But they're just, but we're doing that, and that's what the Special Fathers Network has done for hundreds of dads, and it's helped me talk to other dads, and it really, you know, men are a hard nut to crack, but like David said, there's been a lot of changes in that nowadays. So you're young, powerful, but just keep in mind, you're not 10 feet tall and you're not bulletproof. So emotions are very important for you going forward. Just keep that in mind. I just want to share that.
Yeah, I would just add, I think that emotions and vulnerability certainly overlap, but I don't see them as interchangeable. And while I'm not the most emotional person on the planet, certainly from a professional perspective, I think that, you know, admitting that, you know, you don't have it all together, or that, you know, you need help, right? And the willingness to ask for help, which I think women do much more easily, right? Women are, like you were describing your wife, you know, she's using her blog to connect with other people. She's using this, no doubt, from a therapeutic standpoint, right? Just the fact that she can get it off her chest and that she has an avenue to direct some of that energy. And, you know, I don't think that most people, some people are, but most people are not looking for sympathy or pity, right? When they share their story, right? They want to be heard. They want to be understood. And again, I think there's a difference between being emotional and demonstrating your vulnerability, you know, in your ability to communicate. And I think part of it is asking for help. And, you know, you've already distinguished yourself, Andrew. You know, came in through the, I think it was the conference back in May. Isn't that your first point of contact with the organization? And, you know, you poked around the website. You've tapped into some of these bi-weekly Zoom calls. Hopefully you've listened to some of the podcast interviews, you know, which are just, you know, straight inspiration, right? If, you know, you're a dad and you just need a you know, 30, 40 minute lift me up, you know, once a week, you know, by knowing that there's other men who, in most cases, other men who have gone through things, then, you know, it helps put your situation in perspective. And I think what Scott was saying, dads of like closer to our generation versus yours, they're really bottled up, right? They're not as open to sharing. And there's an isolation that takes place as a result of that, right? You isolate yourself from friends at work, maybe people you went to school with, high school, college, business school. You isolate yourself from neighbors or, you know, friends who don't have a child with special needs, right? Because you don't feel like you've got as much in common, or you just don't want to take the time or the energy to explain yourself. You know, there's a phrase, it sounds a little bit cliche, But one of my interests is motorcycles, and I don't own a motorcycle anymore, but I'll run a motorcycle if I want to take a trip like I did about 2 years ago before COVID with my brother-in-law who lives down in Tennessee, and we had a great 3-day weekend just riding bikes. There's a phrase in the Harley Davidson community, at least I give the attribution to the Harley Davidson community, which says, as it relates to motorcycle riding, if I had to explain, you wouldn't understand, right? And that, I think, is an attitude that a lot of dads have who are raising a child with special needs, communicating with their friends, family members who don't have a child with special needs. If I had to explain, you wouldn't understand, right? It's just something that you have to experience. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't take the time to explain and help to be understood. But I think that your intentionality, if I can call it that, is the strength of yours, right? You're investing. That's the way I think about it. You're not spending time, you're investing your time, and you're educating yourself, like you were saying, about your daughter's condition. And then beyond that, you're taking the time to connect with other dads, tap into resources, and you see the wisdom of being amongst other people who've already been there and done that. And you've had the clairvoyance, if I can put some wind in your sails, which is to say, hey, there's probably not a lot of other dads that have a diagnosis, the exact same diagnosis as my daughter. That's not important, right? It's not that you have to find somebody with that exact same diagnosis. It might help, from a, what do you know about the condition? What can we expect? Please pursue that. But from an experience standpoint, you can connect with virtually any dad who has a child with rare disease, right? And there's 7,000 plus rare diseases, right? So there's a big universe of parents, dads for that matter, who, have traveled the path that, you just got on the beginning of the journey. And I would dare say that it's not even rare disease, right? It just, you're dealing with something that's out of your control. And, you already talked about that, right? That was just the adjustment to becoming a father. You just have to give up control, right? When it's just you, if you put something down, you know exactly where it is. But when you're married, things start to move, right? Like, you can't find something. And when you've got kids, especially when they get older, holy cow, I'm just reclaiming my garage, right? My youngest is 24. Like, she just moved out a few weeks ago. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to live like this anymore, right? Where things are just, everywhere. So I think the ability to sort of let go, not entirely, but like you said, don't be so myopically focused on having to be in control is a strength as well. Hey, I just wanted to acknowledge that Peter Morici, one of our early on dads, in fact, one of the very first dads who joined the Special Fathers Network, my neighbor, has joined the call. Peter, are you there? Okay. Well, I know that he joined the call, and I don't see him because his camera's not on. And Peter, if you're able to join verbally, that would be great. So as relates to the topic, we don't have to stay on the topic, but as long as we...
Sorry, David, I was driving.
Oh,
How are
okay.
you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Good. I just had a massage. It went longer than I expected.
That's good.
So,
with all the things that you've been through this past year, I should say, I'm pleased to hear that you're doing things that are for your own personal benefit, right? I mean, to lower the stress and make sure that you're mentally and physically strong, right? Because, you know how vulnerable your kids are and the impact that you've been able to have on their well-being. And if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to bring your A game to their benefit as well. So.
Yeah, we had 2 floods on top of that. There was a rain, a sewer backup, and then there was the backyard steps overflowed into the house. So it's been a real disaster. And then we got to sell the house this month. The house goes up for sale this month, and I got
Yeah,
to find a
well,
new.
you're making reference to some more administrative or minor things in the big scheme of things. And I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but you're going through a divorce. You've recently been divorced, and you've had some physical challenges, with your eyesight for a long time as well, and been on disability. So, despite those life-altering changes, big changes, some of the big rocks, if you will, you've maintained a positive attitude, and I know it hasn't been a straight line, but as it relates to the topic of vulnerability, I'm wondering what advice you might have for a younger dad like Andrew, or just any dad for that matter, as it relates to the topic of vulnerability.
Well, I would say it's personal. There's never know what's coming ahead. There's a lot of my kids have improved dramatically. Now one's entering high school, and one's entering junior high. So they've made great progress, and I'm thankful for the school system and the support of the community, and that's a big factor. I've had a lot of help. Actually had a 10, as an example, we got a $10,000 IRS tax notice like a year and a half ago. I went to Willow Creek, and they hooked me up with a CPA lawyer, former IRS agent, who got it all wiped away in a year and a half.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And nobody fights the IRS and wins unless you work for the IRS and you're a lawyer and a CPA. So yeah, it's things like that where you see, oh, this is a nightmare coming. The community helped me out to the point where it got completely forgiven.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Congratulations.
So, and that you're an accountant yourself. So it's nobody wins the IRS battles. Nobody even tries to fight them.
Well, one of the things I hear you saying with all the challenges that you've had is that you've had to reach out for help, right? There's certain things that you're just not capable of doing yourself. And, the tax situation was just one example. That's, more of you have to put your trust in the hands of some professionals, right? And just hope, that they're able to do something for you. And that's actually a miracle that they could wipe off the entire tax liability. But I'm thinking more along the lines of some of the challenges that you've had either personally with your own health, or as it relates to some of the challenges that you've had with the learning, I'm going to call them delays, right, that your children have experienced. What have you had to do that maybe you weren't really good at, from the get-go, that you've learned as it relates to reaching out for help, that might be insightful or enlightening for somebody else?
Well, like my son is an example. I essentially diagnosed him with a heavy metal toxicity, and then spent years getting rid of all the metals and mercury in his system. And he got he was in a classroom with kids with Down syndrome, at one point. And now he just graduated and got a President's Award at Station Middle School, which is one of the best middle schools in the state, and 3.5 grade point average. So he's made tremendous progress, though he has no friends. He has online friends, but I asked in the last meeting, does he have any friends at school? And they said no. So, there's still, you make great progress in, academically, but, now it's a social situation. But right now, a lot of people having problems in that area. As far as my daughter, same thing. It was like, she couldn't read at age 8. Turned out she had a visual processing disorder. It took a year and a half, and she can now read, went from reading 5 words a minute to 50. So there's a lot of progress, that kids can always improve. and they can surprise you a lot because they're very, you know, they don't know what you know, and they don't know what they don't know either.
That's a good point. Well, I'm hoping that for your son, Alex, that going to high school is like a reset, right? You know, he can, you know, he's going to be in a bigger environment, and there's an opportunity to be meeting more people. And I'm hoping that there's going to be some friendships that form, you know, and it's not too cliquey, right? That's the issue. You know, transitioning
Well,
from.
they're putting him in the most restrictive classroom, so he's going to be in a classroom with it's at grade level, of course, but with only like 12 kids. So, and I think they initially. So we'll see how that goes. But he can't handle being in a classroom with 25 kids, you know, in Barrington.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
going to be, you know, he's looking forward to it, and it starts in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. And then there's a pretty decent Best Buddies program there at the high school. I don't know, you know, if that's something that would be a suitable path to pursue or not, but you know, many of those relationships, you know, go all 4 years, and last beyond high school. And
Oh,
I know a
yeah,
couple of
with the special needs kids,
yeah.
with the volunteers, the high school volunteers. Yeah, they have
Mhm.
an excellent, unbelievable, you know, kids putting in 100 hours or more of community service. But my son doesn't see him as being as needing any of that. That's the problem. He has
Maybe he
friends
can be.
online. He's talking to, you know, over Roblox and all this, and playing games, and that's good to see. Um,
Well, here's the seed I want to plant. And sorry to bore the rest of you, because Peter and I could have a conversation one-on-one. But maybe he could be one of the volunteers and help some of those kids that need the help. That's what I'm thinking.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll just see how things go. I think he's going to have a lot on his plate with the changes of the living situation, and
Mhm.
because we're both moving, so we don't even know where we're moving to. But I'm staying in Barrington.
Okay. Well, let's keep the lines of communication open. So anyway, the topic tonight's conversation is vulnerability as a super strength, or a superpower. And I'm happy to respond to any questions, or if you guys have any other thoughts that you might want to share with one another, that would be great.
David, I'd be curious if I think could guilt be part of the vulnerability issue?
Guilt?
You know, yeah. I mean, you know, you go to someone, you're talking to, you don't want to talk to anybody because you feel like you're talking about a pity party or whining, or you don't want to go ask for help because you feel guilty that you're using your vulnerability to get something. Because I know a lot of people that abuse that. I've seen a lot of people. They you know, well, the guy on the corner with the bucket that says I will work for food, but you offer him food and he wants money. But that's kind of a silly way to look at it. But I think a lot of dads probably feel, a lot of men feel like they can't, since they're the provider, they're the fixer, they're the guy, they cannot go to ask for help because they feel guilty.
Yeah, the way I would
Like I'm getting,
paraphrase what you've said, Scott, is
yeah,
that if if you have a hard time asking for help, and it
right,
doesn't have to be financial, that's something that, you know, dads need to get over, right? Because if you can get your child classified or diagnosed in a certain way, you're entitled to services that you might not otherwise be. So you need to get over that from an ego standpoint. But the point you're making is a good one, which is dads see themselves as providers, and asking for help, at least psychologically, would be like admitting that you can't do it, right? Or that you can't shoulder it by yourself, and that you're somehow less than, by asking for help. That's what I think I heard you say. And it it's a
that
twisted
sounds
way of
better.
thinking about this.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Can I use that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. see, what I've learned doing all these interviews, people have all these great thoughts, and I just listen, and I've developed really good listening skills, right? So I can just usually say something, I just repeat it basically in a different way. And I think that the point you raise is a really good one. And again, I know that the guys that we have in the network, and particularly the two other guys on the call, they already get it, right? And they're not like Neanderthals about this. But that's part of the challenge, is that we have an enlightened group of dads. They're erring on the side of engaging, right? They join the Special Fathers Network either as a mentor father, or they're looking to be mentored, which is another question. As long as we've got you on the horn, Andrew, do you feel like you've connected with one or more dads in a informal way, or can I maybe go through the list, not now, but just offline, and maybe think about a dad or two that you might enjoy getting acquainted with, right? Somebody that could be like a big brother to you.
Yeah, I think that would be good. You definitely could go through that. I think I've really mostly been doing a lot of we did the conference, and then a lot of just these Tuesday, or some of these Tuesday calls. So I think that's great. That I would be open to totally.
Okay. Well, when I think of rare disease and, dads who, are the role models, I already mentioned one of them is John Crowley. And if you don't know the John Crowley story, do me a favor, find his podcast. It's in the 70s. So, going on 100 podcasts ago now. He's one of two people that I actually got on a plane to interview, right? Out of the first 180 or so interviews. And I could have certainly interviewed him remotely, but I thought, I'll just be another person, looking to nab an hour of his time. And I'm so glad that I, flew to Princeton, New Jersey, which is where they're headquartered, where Amicus Therapeutics is headquartered, so not really far from where you are. And met with him face to face, and he was like so impressed that I would have taken a day off of work, put myself up in a hotel the night before so I could be there first thing in the morning, working around his schedule, and spent an hour and a half in his office. And he's just, a very unique individual. And his story is a well-told story. The last thing he needed was to have an interview with the Special Fathers Network. We needed him a lot more than he needed us, if I can say it the right way. And we're just so thankful to have, people of his ilk involved with what we're doing, and think that what we're doing is really important. So he would be at the top of my list, but I'm going to go through the roster, not just of dads in New Jersey, but our other rare disease dads. And there's a couple remarkable dads. I mean, I know the dads best who have done the podcast interviews, because I usually put 5 to 10 hours of preparation in each of those interviews. And I'll give it a little bit more thought, and I'll make an introduction or two introductions. I think that it might be helpful for you to listen, if you could find the time to listen to John Crowley's podcast. Let me know if I'm thinking along the right lines.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I actually think I've heard his story before, even well before all this. I think I think there was a movie or something else I had seen.
Oh, no. There's a couple movies.
That's what it's just, I don't know the name. I just remember seeing a movie, and it was probably one of my nursing classes, that I feel like I saw this movie, and this just kind of makes sense now.
Oh yeah. Well, it's the same guy. The short story is that there was a cover story a reporter did in the Wall Street Journal about him finding a cure. This woman, Greta Anand, I think is her name, took 2 years off to write the book, The Cure. And then Harrison Ford learned about the book, optioned the rights to the book, and made the movie. I forget the title of the movie. Harrison Ford not only directed, but starred in the movie, not as John Crowley, but the kooky scientist that gets credit for finding the cure. And then John ended up writing a memoir about his experience as well. And I know that this is not a political statement, but if you listen to the podcast and it's toward the end, it was Rare Disease Day, which I believe is February, from what I remember.
Yeah.
And it was February 2017, I think it was, and it was President Trump, then President Trump's first address to Congress, and it just happened to be on Rare Disease Day. And they invited Megan, Crowley, and John, the rest of the family, to be there, to listen to the president's address. And President Trump called Megan Crowley out in his address, like gave her about 2 minutes of his 60-minute speech. And it was really, I think, quite powerful, right? So
I think I might have. I think I might actually saw that too. Actually, come to think of it, I definitely watched that first speech, and yeah, I think I remember that now too.
Okay, well, it's all included
It's
in the podcast. So listen to the podcast. Once you do, send me an email, and I'll make an introduction. I just think it would be helpful for you to get the backstory, and that would be an easy introduction to make, just because of the geographic proximity there. Okay. Well, any other questions? We set up the whole shooting match for young dads like yourself, Andrew. So I'm just thrilled that, even though we've got a small group tonight, that, you're taking initiative, you're intentional about your parenting and improving your situation.
Andrew, do you have an email address?
Yeah, I could put it in, where's the?
You can just tell me right here. Oh, or you can tell me.
I'll put it, I'm going to spell it out for you because it's.
You don't have to, Andrew, because I sent you guys an email right when the call was starting. And I didn't blind copy you. I just, because everybody's involved in the network.
Okay, so it's on there?
Yeah.
I'm just going to send you a little booklet thing I wrote, a lot of thoughts and opinions of mine over the years. And maybe there's some things in there that could help you. Or,
Great, I appreciate anything. This is why I kind of got involved, just to
okay.
kind of
I'll send it to you.
help me in my journey.
Oh, that's what it's called. Trust your journey. I'll send you a copy.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we're at the hour. I just want to say thank you for those that participated. Great to connect with the three of you. And we're doing a topic that would not appeal to the broad audience of dads in the network 2 weeks from now, which is dating. And it's not your child dating, the child with special needs dating, but it's Chandra Cuban, who's going to talk about the Special Hearts dating app site that they created for single parents raising a child or children with special needs. And it's really fascinating, but it obviously is a very small niche of the dads involved in our network. But Peter, I guess, given the fact that you've gone through a divorce, not right away, but at some point, that dating app might have some appeal to you. Just saying. I think you're on mute.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I got on Match a while ago, and that's a crazy adventure. So, because I'm not used to this sort of thing, and then you find all these women in their 50s looking for the perfect man, which actually doesn't exist. And didn't find them 20 years, 30 years ago. I don't know why they're going to find them today, but it's kind of a whirlwind, situation. But I don't really have the time for it now. But in a couple of months, I'd be interested in listening to that conversation in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm not saying that you need to tap in, but I know that it's a resource. And, I was reading a story. It was a big story in the Wall Street Journal. And it talks about all these dating apps and how many there are, right? They're the big ones. But there's a lot of little niche ones, right? Depending on what your interests are, whether it's religious or, whatever, whatever reflects your values, basically.
David, I had a guy, I helped a man through a divorce, a great friend of mine, longtime friend. He didn't want to get divorced, but he ended up getting divorced. And he was using the dating apps. And I was like, okay, that's great, you know. And, oh, I could tell you some stories. ChristianMingle.com. Should not have that name. But he had some really great stories that I can't share with you on here, but I'm glad he finally met something. He met a girl he knew in high school at a reunion, and in Mississippi, he met her. They rekindled. They've been married for a while. She was a real estate agent. She helped him become her real estate agent partner, and they live in Nashville, and he's just a whole new man. But the dating sites for him was just like, and you might want to mention it in 2 weeks, that the dating sites, oh boy, no, I wouldn't want to be single. I'm sorry, Peter.
Well, there
Don't
was
hang up your
actually
sword,
a guy
man.
I met.
Don't hang up your
was-
sword.
Oh yeah. Well, there was a guy I met that was going to do a dating site for people with disabilities,
Ah,
you know, like adults or whatever with disabilities. And I thought that was a good idea, and I encouraged him to do it. I haven't heard back from him, but that would be like another niche thing. But because there's 1 out of 17 people has a disability
yeah.
in the
Oh.
States, so it's not a small number.
Well, to be honest with you, we all have a disability. Some are just more special than others, right?
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
We all have something going on. But yeah, dating.
Well,
sites,
guys,
I'm
it's
so
been
glad
great
I
to
went to it.
connect tonight. And I'll just make reference, Andrew, I don't know if this would have any appeal to you. I know, Peter, you and I have talked about it as the mastermind group. We do the meetings on Wednesdays at 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So we picked a time that wouldn't interfere with work or family for most people, except for one of the guys who's in Washington State. So, you know, he's got 3 young kids, and, you know, he's still on board with doing something at 6:30. And his wife said, you know, it's only 1 day a week. You know, I can take care of putting the kids to bed. So if that has any appeal to you, Andrew, you know, to learn more about the mastermind group, there's actually 1 slot that's open. We have 9 guys. We're focused on getting 10. And Scott, you might be interested to know that Rich Gathro, right? Super seasoned guy, has been married for